Hey, welcome back. You're listening to Real Food Mental Health, and I'm your host, Cody Cox. Today's episode is about holistic approaches to mental health or psychotherapy, and I know that's the overarching theme of the entire show, but I'm excited to present to you today's guest because she is a licensed counselor like myself and a certified nutritional therapy practitioner like myself. So we are very much on the same page with the way we approach mental health as licensed clinicians. Now, a little bit about today's guest. Her name is Emma Donovan. Now, Emma Donovan, MA, LPC, is a licensed professional counselor and holistic health educator. She's the founder of Alternative Therapy STL, where she integrates psychotherapy with functional nutrition, spiritual counseling, and holistic wellness. Emma is also the founder of Holistic and Functional Psychology Institute, or HFPI, an education platform for therapists and health professionals. She's currently completing her doctorate in whole health leadership, advancing her vision of a more holistic and regenerative model of mental health. Now, you may have heard me mention in the last episode that I am now an FNTP, a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, which is the advanced certification awarded by my nutrition school. What does that mean? Well, that means I am now able to test your body to get bio-individual information to make supplement recommendations. So I am actually looking for a couple of practice clients. So if you are in Cache Valley, Utah or near Cache Valley, Utah, and you are interested in getting some free testing, please contact me through my website at beavercreekwellness.com/contact. Welcome to the Real Food Mental Health Podcast, where we explore the powerful connection between mental and physical health. My name is Cody Cox, a holistic nutritional psychotherapist, and I'm here to guide you on a journey to true wellness, mind, body, and spirit. If you're tired of quick fixes and want real solutions that address the root cause, you're in the right place. Let's get started on your path to lasting wellness. Welcome back to Real Food Mental Health. My name is Cody Cox, and today I'm talking with a fellow psychotherapist, Emma Donovan. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. We're also both NTPs.
Yes, and that is super exciting for me because there are so few of us. Like, I know there are maybe a handful of other therapists who are also NTPs, and I've met like one other one, but I've heard of others. And so it is exciting for me to hear that there are therapists who have a more holistic perspective. Now, in your experience, um, have you, I don't know what it's like in St. Louis. You're still in St. Louis, right?
I am, yeah.
Are other therapists in St. Louis claiming to be holistic when they're actually not?
Yes. I mean, I think it's definitely not just St. Louis. I think it's globally or nationally.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if that was more of if that's just where I am or if it's just everywhere because I have noticed that.
Yeah, and that's a curious thing to talk about, and that's a topic I think about a lot, you know, because it's interesting. How do we define the term holistic? The way that I define it is just it means the whole person, truly looking at the whole person. So, are you looking at their spirit, their body, their mind, how they move, their sleep, their nutrition, the environment that they're in, the health of their community? That's my definition of holistic. That absolutely includes nutrition um, and a lot of other things. But I know I've seen this online and also locally where people will say, I'm holistic. And what they actually mean by that is that they know a little about mindfulness or
Yeah.
they do energy medicine or maybe they work with tarot cards or it's like they're pulling in one complementary modality and saying I'm holistic now. And what I would say to that is you're now more holistic than you were, but if you're not looking at the big picture, then it's not really holistic. And some people could argue with me and be like, well, it's a never ending thing then becoming holistic. And I would agree with that. It's a unfolding journey. If you and I stay in this field until the day that we die, and we want to be holistic, it's going to be a continual process of learning more about all these different domains of holistic health.
Yeah, so I worked in a group practice years ago that was supposed to be a holistic practice.
Hmm.
And I was one of the first employees that was hired. And so I think my employer, I think she kind of had the idea. But then the clinicians that she hired after me were just, like you were saying, did some mindfulness stuff.
Hmm.
And they kind of alluded to diet, but they had no training on nutrition whatsoever.
Yeah.
Mostly they were just doing like EMDR and your conventional therapies. And not that I practice EMDR. It's not that I don't think EMDR is a good thing, but it's not really holistic. And I think it's more of an issue of it's not really how a person practices per se. It's more just about their overall philosophy.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's like you were saying. It's like it's a journey. I'm
Hmm.
like 20 years into this or more. I don't even know when I started with this, but it's a journey, and you learn more and more all the time.
Yeah.
And you have to start somewhere. And you could technically say that you're holistic at the beginning of the journey. But I think it's more about that mindset, having that understanding that everything really is interconnected. And I'm seeing
Absolutely.
a great discrepancy where most therapists, at least in my area, I'm hearing a lot of them say, "Yeah, we're a holistic practice," but then you go into their office and they just start doing conventional things. I think it's a there's a lot of confusion here. There's also confusion with the word integrative, where
Hmm.
to me, integrative means that you're doing some holistic things, but you're also integrating with conventional things. And so, just because you do some holistic things like the mindfulness, I would say that's more integrative rather than holistic.
I would agree with you. Yeah, I mean, there's so much confusion around all of these terms. Integrative, that's how I define it too, exactly as you said, integrating more holistic or alternative or complementary things into the conventional paradigm. Holistic is this big picture view. And you're right, it's a lot about the philosophy and not just the way that you practice. Because you could have a holistic philosophy and be well aware that nutrition and diet impact mental health or other aspects of physical health, but you don't practice that. But you respect people who do, and you're willing and ready to refer out or to maybe even just educate clients on the importance of food or exercise or whatever else. And there's also the word alternative that people use. And it's like that's an alternative to conventional, which it may or may not be holistic. Maybe an alternative modality might be something like Tai Chi for mental health. Like it's an alternative to what's conventionally done. Is it holistic? Yeah, Tai Chi is kind of holistic. But in and of itself, as a discipline, it's not necessarily holistic because the holistic is about the philosophy,
Yeah.
you know?
You need to have the right mindset. So interestingly, so I mentioned a group practice that I worked at that was supposed to be holistic and then it turned out not to be. And
Mhm.
then I worked at another group practice. This was just a couple years ago, where I think the owners were thinking that they wanted to be holistic, and so they hired a dietitian.
Mm.
And I live in a university town where they have this big dietetics program. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think I think I'm running into a lot of naysayers in my community because I'm holistic, where universities tend to not be. And so they hired this dietitian out of this university because they thought, well, diet's important for mental health. And I got kind of mad and I was like, I'm in nutrition school. Like, I'm studying so that I can be a therapist and practice nutrition at the same time. And I don't think they
Mhm.
realized I was doing that. That's actually when I left. But I think it would be interesting to, for my listeners who maybe they don't even know, what is conventional therapy? Like, how would you define that, Emma?
Well, I mean, I can talk about the way that therapy has been conventionally done for a long time. There's been multiple waves in therapy. When Therapy was brand new. It was Freud kind of bringing it on the scene. Throughout the different iterations, therapy tends to focus on the psyche, the subconscious, the mind, the emotions. It tends to be mostly focused on talk therapy. It tends to focus on cognitions, like the thoughts that you're having. And also, there's a big focus on managing symptoms. So, if you're coming in and you have an anxiety disorder or a depressive disorder, a lot of the times what a therapist is trying to do is help you learn coping skills to manage those symptoms, like maybe a breathing exercise or a journaling activity or something like that. So there's a big focus on managing and coping. There can also be a focus on recovery. That's something that I hope for all my clients is recovery. That's not always, though, what clients are necessarily taught to expect from therapy or what therapists are always expecting or the results that therapists are always getting when they're working with clients.
Yeah, I mean, there's when I was in graduate school, I was taught that therapists tend to be holistic, and I think what they were referring to is we might ask about sleep, we might ask about exercise, we might ask about diet, but beyond asking, we're pretty much hands off, and we're
Mhm.
quick to just refer out
Mhm.
if there's a very serious need for extra support in those areas. But conventional therapy to me it's mostly talk therapy. It's mostly skills, and I don't think skills are bad. And trauma therapy is another one where you're whether it's EMDR or ART or I practice EFT, also known as tapping. I think these are good too, but it only covers the psychological side of things, and
Yeah.
it's not really that sustainable. And so I'm excited to talk to you today about how to make things sustainable, or in your words, regenerative mental health. So can you describe what that is?
Yeah. So this is a term that it came to my mind. I don't know if anybody else is talking about regenerative mental health yet. I haven't looked into it because it's just an idea that popped into my head recently and I got really into it. So, we were just talking about conventional therapy. And I think that there's a lot of people moving more into root cause methodologies. So, there's people getting more interested in things like trauma, if that is the root cause, or things like nutrition, if that's part of what's driving somebody's symptoms, or other things that might be driving their symptoms. And there's been a shift. There is a shift that I believe is ongoing. Obviously, not everybody fully gets it right because there's a lot of people talking about practicing holistically and they're not. Um, but there's a shift towards making the connection that if somebody has a symptom, that's their body telling them that something is off. And then we're trying to shift into finding, well, what is it that's off exactly? So, regenerative mental health, as I define it, it kind of piggybacks off of that, but it's not just let's find the root cause to heal it. It's more, how do we live in a way that we are preventing symptoms from occurring in the first place and where we're shifting our lifestyle and the way that we're showing up in the world so that symptoms naturally kind of take care of themselves. So, in the functional medicine approach, which I'm getting a master's in human nutrition and functional medicine right now, I have a lot of respect for functional medicine. But a lot of the times it's like we're finding certain lab markers, we're looking at certain symptoms, and we're finding what's off. And then we're specifying a specific treatment to turn that around, what's off. And I have so much respect for that. I have so much respect for the different methodologies that functional practitioners use, whether that be supplements or, innovative technologies. I take supplements myself. But when I look at that, I'm like, okay, this is definitely root cause work and it's absolutely a step in the right direction. But I'm trying to think bigger picture than that. Are we really going to heal the whole world by giving everybody 10 supplements to take every day for the rest of their life? I think the answer is no. Now, can that sometimes be helpful and necessary for someone who really needs it? Yes. And also, I want to look bigger picture than that for the long term and ask the question, why are we living in such a way that people need that kind of an intervention in the first place.
Yes.
So that's how I see regenerative mental health. How can we shift the way that we're living so that we don't need to have these super targeted therapies for these super targeted things because you're very deficient in something, or your body's failing to fight off an infection because it's been weakened? Why has it been weakened? And what can we do to help you shift into a place where you're more naturally robust?
So, what are the most common reasons why people are mentally ill that you run into? So, I mean, what's causing people to be sick in the first place?
Oh, there could be so many things.
Yeah, there really are, but like just kind of a general, if you were to make a broad stroke at it, what
uh,
would it be?
yeah. Sometimes it is beliefs and thoughts. Sometimes it is past traumas. Sometimes it is you're in an environment that's sick. You know, you might be in a sick building that has something like mold, or you might have lead in your water or something like that. You might not have access to the outdoors or not connect with the outdoors very much. You could have relationships that are less than ideal. You could be in a work environment or any kind of role that you're in that doesn't feel like it's aligned with who you truly are. For some people, they're spiritually disconnected. For some people, they're not moving their bodies enough. They're on tech a lot. They're sedentary a lot. They don't have much of a connection with their food. They don't know where their food comes from. Food is highly processed. Even if they're buying fruits and vegetables, they're just getting them from a grocery store that might have been shipped from, Guatemala or Canada or wherever else. Um, I would say maybe if I were to sum it all up, a lot of these things have in common is we're disconnected from ourselves, and we're disconnected from the things that naturally lead to wellness. I would say that that's the main idea.
Yes. So, what's one of the first steps that a person could make to become more connected?
I would say look at where you're disconnected. Consider where you're disconnected and go from there. And a lot of people know. Like a lot of people, if I were to just ask all the listeners to just consider where are you disconnected in your life most right now, people know. It's like boom, they know. It could be their relationships. It could be like, wow, I'm totally disconnected from my body. I'm totally disconnected from my emotions. I'm totally disconnected from my food. And if you do need something that's a little bit more structured to kind of guide that reflection, I have created a pretty robust questionnaire called the Holistic Wellness Questionnaire that people could take, that goes through 10 different domains of wellness. And then you start with the initial 10, and then based on the one that you're most curious to explore more, you can dive into that a lot more deeply with further questions, or you could just take the whole thing, but it's long. It's over 100 questions long, but it really gives you a super big picture of your overall wellness.
You were going to send that to me. I don't think I ever got it.
I'm going
Um,
to send it to you.
so yeah, that'll be interesting to see. There's also the wellness wheel. I think is super common among health coaches, particularly. Do you ever
Yeah.
use that in your practice?
I don't. I've used it myself though, and I really like plotting the different things on the wheel and connecting all the dots. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the wellness wheel, but it's a wheel divided up into a pie, and then there's a different domain of wellness in each of them. So it could be like physical, emotional, vocational, and you rate yourself on a scale of 0 to 10 or 0 to 5, and you put it somewhere within those pie pieces, and then you can kind of connect and see which ones are weaker. But that is similar, and
Yeah,
that's a good starting tool, I would say.
I just came across a PDF copy of the wellness wheel yesterday, and I was like, I should probably start using that with my clients.
Yeah,
Because it is a really good self-awareness practice, and it's like you said, I think people just kind of know where they're disconnected in general, but to see it written out, it might make them think of some things that they weren't thinking before, like, oh, I wasn't really thinking about being disconnected from my emotions, but yeah, that's a problem. And so just seeing that and being able to map it out can help too.
absolutely.
We were talking about conventional therapy, which is really just about symptom management, in my opinion. And I mean, there are some exceptions like trauma based things. Obviously, if you're going to do trauma therapy, that's a pretty deep modality and can address the root cause if that is the root cause. But when it comes to skills and stuff, I think that's a little bit more symptom management focused. And also, many conventional therapists still push the idea of medication. How do you feel about medication?
Oh, you're asking the big questions here.
Yeah.
So, I would say I don't I can count on one hand the times that I've encouraged a client to get medication, and it's been a long time. I mean, I don't know if I've ever sat down with a client and said, "Hey, I think you should pursue this." I have clients who are on medication before they come to me. It's very rare that somebody would get on medication after starting seeing me. I think it's such a deep topic, and it's very nuanced, honestly. There's so much that we don't know about neurochemistry, and my instinct is to not interfere with it if we can help it.
Yeah.
I would much rather help people find alternative ways to feel better. I see it as kind of a band-aid. And in my mind, I'm hoping that if a client is on a medication that they can eventually come off. You know, some people can use it almost like as crutches while they're recovering and they walk around. It helps them walk around, and then once they're recovered, they get rid of the crutches. I don't like to be prescriptive about what other people are doing. So if you're listening to this and you're on meds, I don't have any judgment about that. Where I think they're best utilized is as a crutch and only if needed, because the body and brain, they're so delicate and there's so much that we don't understand. And psychiatrists and also primary care doctors, which primary care doctors prescribe them like antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds quite frequently. In almost all cases, they're not actually looking at your neurotransmitter profile before prescribing a med. So if you have depression, they might give you an SSRI, and perhaps you don't actually have a serotonin problem.
It's based off of symptoms, right? It's symptom
It's based
management.
off of symptoms. And then also, what I would say is, even if you do have a serotonin problem and you were to take a neurotransmitter test and find that, my next thing that I would say is not, oh, here's med. I would say, oh, interesting. Your body is struggling to synthesize serotonin. I wonder what your body needs in order to make that serotonin. You know, does it need more amino acids? Does it not have enough amino acid backbones? Does it not have enough vitamin B6, um, 9, 12, vitamin D, iron, magnesium, like all the cofactors that are needed to synthesize serotonin? Can we look at your diet? What does your diet look like? And if you do need some extra supports, you could look at supplementation. But how I see it with neurotransmitter synthesis is it's kind of like you're building a house and you don't have all the raw materials you need to build a house. And it's like missing the doors and missing the windows and, you know, missing the lighting. And you're like, oh, this house isn't working. Let's bring in a medication to fix it. And it's like, well, the raw materials weren't there in the first place. Of course, you don't have a complete house. So if you
Mhm.
give the body the materials that it needs to make a house, it will make a house in most cases, unless there's something else coming in and jeopardizing that. You know, like if you have a heavy metal that's coming in and displacing the metals that you need, or, you know, something else like that. But I like to be able to look at those labs if I can and see. But also, you don't always need a lab to look at somebody's diet and consider whether it's nutrient rich or not. So that's kind of how where I stand on medication. You know, some people who have very, very severe issues, they're really struggling to cope. They might be considering committing suicide or something like that. If meds are what saves their life, awesome. And also, can we then eventually, once they're stable, circle back to more foundational stuff to hopefully get them to a point where they're no longer unstable.
Sounds like we're on the same page. So I just saw someone this morning who he's suicidal, doesn't have a job, not in school. He lives with his brother, and his brother takes care of most of the expenses, thankfully. So he's got a place to live. But every time I haven't been seeing him that long. Let's be fair. It's been maybe 4 sessions so far, but every single time I've seen him, no improvement whatsoever.
Hmm.
And I just can't help but think like people who are in this kind of condition are I can't get him to drink more water. I can't get him to go to bed earlier. I can't get him to go out and get some sunshine. And so people who are in this state probably could use a boost from medication. And I really hate recommending that because I
Mhm.
know the possible side effects with some SSRIs. Some side effects could be homicidal behavior or suicidal behavior. It's like, if we know that those are possible side effects, why are we even prescribing them? But
Mhm.
then there are other things that really do give people that boost to where they can start learning these life skills and making these small dietary changes or lifestyle changes or whatever it is that they need to do to become more regenerative in their mental health.
Yeah.
And so I keep going back and forth on the medications where it's like, I really wish I could just throw some supplements at them and just say, start taking this. And then once they feel better, we can start talking more about some
Mhm.
actions to take. But sometimes it just doesn't feel like that's possible.
Yeah. Have you come across the naturopathic order?
No, tell me about that.
Oh, I think you would like it. So it's a pyramid and it basically orders your interventions. So we're supposed to start at the bottom, which is establishing the foundations for health or establishing the foundations for cure, I think it is. And so that's like, what do humans need to be well? And then once you've done that, if that's not enough, then you move up the pyramid. And so as you move up the pyramid, you're getting into supporting weakened organ systems, and then if that doesn't work, we're also trying to stimulate natural healing. I think that comes before restoring the weakened organ systems. And then you get into natural symptom relief. And then you get into synthetic symptom relief. This is at the top of the pyramid. And then at the very top of the pyramid is high force interventions like an involuntary hospitalization or a surgery or something like that. So the
Mhm.
idea is you start with the more gentle things first and the things that bodies need. And then once you've done that, if it's not working, you can move into something that's has a little bit more power behind it, like a supplement. And if that's still not working and the person is really suffering, then you can consider something like a med. I think in some cases, like that client that you're describing, there is a case to be made for like this person can't drink more water or go outside. It's like, okay, then maybe skip up the pyramid and go to the stuff that's going to be more symptom management, but then eventually circle back down because that person is not going to make a full recovery unless someone helps him circle back down to the
Mhm.
foundations that create optimal health, because we need that stuff. It's like in some cases, we're not so different from plants. Like if plants don't get enough sunlight and water and fertilizer and space and soil, they will not thrive. And it's not that complicated when it comes to plants, but sometimes we complicate it when it comes to human beings. We're like, oh, I wonder why I don't feel good. And then if you look at lifestyle and that person never gets the chance to move their bodies or go outside or eat nourishing food or have nourishing relationships, it's like, of course you don't feel good. Of course you don't feel good. It can be validating. And then also, can we support that person to the extent that they're able and ready to start to incorporate more of that? Because that's what's going to lead to lasting change.
I think conventional care has somewhat of an order too. It's just a lot fewer steps. So, I mean, even when you go to just your regular old continuing education for psychotherapists, they talk about escalating care for certain clients or a higher level of care.
Mhm.
And really what they mean by that is Do they need medication? And then the next step up would be residential treatment. And
Mhm.
that's it. Those are the only options. But
Yeah.
when you have more of a holistic philosophy like you and I do, you see a lot more steps to it. It's not that we are totally avoiding the medication because like I said, I think in extreme circumstances it actually kind of makes some sense.
Mhm.
But it is an extreme circumstance that I might suggest
Yeah.
somebody go and see a prescribing physician or nurse practitioner or whoever it may be. For most people, it's all coming down to diet and lifestyle. And
Mhm.
I can't remember where I heard this, but somebody on a podcast like a year ago said, living in a city is a recipe for depression.
Oh.
And it totally is. I mean, if you think about it, you kind of described this earlier, Emma, being sedentary, staring at screens all day, eating junk food. I mean, when you're in a city, you have way more access to fast food, drive-throughs.
Mhm.
It's a whole lot more convenient to access these things compared to if you live out in the middle of nowhere. And so, just the convenience alone, I think, is what contributes to all of this illness, mental and physical illness. And we need to step away from that. I'm not saying move out of the city, but try to make your life a little bit less convenient. And chances are that's going to be healthier for you.
Absolutely. That is something that I think about a lot. I like to compare human beings and human psyches to nature a lot because I find that it just makes it so much more concrete. Something that I've noticed is that my office plants, some of them are just so delicate and so fragile. Like when I moved some of my succulents to my new office, they just dropped their leaves immediately, like just by being jostled a little bit. And I had this realization that they had been deprived of wind and they had been deprived of resistance. And because they had never been moved and it had weakened them to the point where they could only hold their integrity if they were completely still. And that happens to humans as well. I think convenience culture, oh my goodness, it's done so much damage. So much damage. Because when you take away resistance and challenge, humans cannot strengthen themselves. Where is our psychological strength going to come from if it's never challenged?
Mhm. Yeah. And I can't help but think technology is all about increasing convenience. So I love technology. I use the internet all the time. We're recording this podcast over the internet right now.
Yeah.
And so I think it has some really great uses, but I think the internet is one of the technologies that has created this disaster that we find ourselves in of mental and physical health, or mental and physical illness rather. We need to get away from this. So it's the internet, I think, or I don't know exactly where it started. I want to say it kind of started with air conditioning because that kept people inside so many decades ago. I think it was about the 1960s when we first started seeing air conditioning in the United States. That
Mhm.
kept people inside, watching TV, listening to the radio. And then the internet comes around. Technically, it was invented in the 80s, but people didn't really start getting it in their homes until the 90s. That made things so much worse, especially after we got rid of dial up and started going more toward the high speed options like DSL and then fiber optics. And so the internet works so much better and we can do so many more things with it.
Mhm.
But because of that, we're sitting and staring at screens so much more.
Yeah.
And so I challenge all of my clients, get away from your screen and go outside.
Mm.
Sometimes you have to stare at your screen. Like I write case notes, I update my website. There are certain things that I have to use the internet for, but you can still take a break throughout the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's so much nuance to it, and I don't think that the internet or air conditioning or any or cars are all good or all bad. But I do think we all need to be reflecting on, is my use of this in my best interest right now or not? It's like when you're working, when you're seeing a virtual client, when you're writing notes, yes, that's in your best interest and it's in your client's best interest. Now, if you add that all up and you're doing notes and seeing clients and then watching TV and getting on TikTok all day and you're not moving and it's taking away from other things, when you add all that together, no, it's not in your best interest.
That's the typical therapist, by the way.
Yeah. Like, it takes so much intentionality. We all need to have so much intentionality about our lives, and the default settings will absolutely make us sick. They will absolutely make us sick. And so we all need to be intentional about returning to connection with ourselves, our bodies, our spirits, the earth, our food, because if we're not intentional about those things, we're going to get dragged into sickness, and it's going to be inevitable, and it's going to be obvious why we got sick.
So, forgive me for putting you on the spot a little bit, because maybe you haven't thought about this before, but I heard the other day that depression is a symptom, not a root cause. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I'd have to think about it more to develop a full opinion about it, but it totally makes sense. And I mean, there are so many different causes of depression. Somebody could be lonely, somebody could be grieving, somebody could have a vitamin D deficiency,
Yeah.
somebody could have mold in their home, they could have heavy metal toxicity, they could be deficient in omega-3 fatty acids or certain B vitamin. Like, there's so many things. Um, I've also heard it argued, and I wonder what you think about this, that depression is sort of a natural state that we might dip into sometimes and come back out. And it's like part of the natural range of human experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I have told people before, you can be depressed and not have depression. Like, I mean,
Mm.
you can be depressed and I can't necessarily diagnose you.
Mhm.
That's normal. And I even tell people that about anxiety as well, where it's like, it's okay to feel anxious sometimes. That doesn't mean you have a diagnosable condition.
Yeah, I definitely believe it about anxiety. I mean, I'm still working out what I think about depression, if that's just kind of part of the normal range of human emotion or not. I mean, certainly in cases like grief, that makes sense. Or loneliness, it makes sense that would be the result. And I think it can be telling us something in those cases. It can be pointing us towards what we need.
I often think about like people who are in tribes living in a village in the middle of nowhere. If somebody got sick, what was their behavior like? They probably went off by themselves and they
Mm,
rested. And you could say that they were depressed
yeah.
until they healed.
Yes. There are also certain inflammatory cytokines in the body that the body makes when it's mounting an immune response against something like a virus or a bacteria that are linked to depression. So, like, you picked that up, and you're thinking about tribes because it's intuitive, right? But there's even biomarkers in the body that prove what it is that you're saying. There are inflammatory cytokines that will make you depressed and make you want to, like, make you fatigued and make you want to just go be in bed alone. And it is a way of resting the body and also getting you away from the rest of the tribe as well, so you don't make other people sick.
So Mary Ruddick, I'm not sure what her credentials are. She's a nutritionist of some kind, but she said a few years ago she mentioned something on a podcast that I was like, I'm not sure if I believe in this, but basically she said that if everybody was healthy, there would be no introverts. And
Hmm.
I think I was mildly offended by that because I've always identified as an introvert. I think most therapists do.
Me
Um,
too.
but
Yeah.
the more I think about it, honestly, it's like when I feel well, I don't feel introverted. If I have energy and my joints don't hurt and like all the things that I would hope for in having good health, I actually want to socialize.
Hmm.
And so as I've been thinking about that over the last few years, I'm like, actually that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I still call myself an introvert, but now I'm coming around to this idea that it's because I've got some things going on biologically that might be
Mhm.
contributing to me not always wanting to socialize.
Yeah. Yeah, not only that, but also the state of our culture and relationships. I mean, so much of our culture in the United States is founded based off of achievement or status or, stuff like that. And I think those things can be kind of fatiguing to expose oneself to. And then also when we go out, it's like there's loud noises and bright lights and like things that are kind of unnatural that I think can be also kind of fatiguing to the system. So I wonder if introversion is a bit of an adaptation to the modern environment.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Yeah. And as you were saying that too, I was thinking we're sensitive to different things. I mean, not everybody's going to be sensitive to the electric lighting that is flashing outside the window or the loud noises or whatever it is. We all have different sensitivities, and maybe that's part of our physical health as well. Um, but either way, it's going to affect us all differently, and so we're going to have different symptoms that manifest as a result. I wish we could keep talking, honestly, but I'm just looking at the time and thinking maybe this is where we should probably wrap up our episode. Um, with that said, Emma, if there was one thing that you could change about the way people approach health and wellness, what would it be?
There's so many different things I could say. Maybe I'll say more than one. A lot of people think of health and wellness as this superfluous thing. It's not. It's what it is fundamentally is your needs, whether or not you're meeting your needs. So treating it as something that is quite serious, that's something that I would change. Another thing I would change is return to the basics. So it can get so complicated. I mean, there's people out there saying you need to do this biohacking thing or drink this smoothie or put 5 grams of this into your, you know, protein shake every time. It gets so complicated and it doesn't always have to be. Let's simplify it. And I've read parts of nutrition and physical degeneration. I'm familiar with Weston A. Price. And, so much of his research was about studying native tribes and how they lived and how healthy it was that they were.
Hmm.
So maybe instead of doing more, trying to be more productive, trying to biohack and do all of that kind of stuff, can we simplify it and come back just to our bodies and to our food and just eating colorful, nutrient rich food and going and spending some time outside and moving around?
I think when you live in a city, it takes more effort to do those things. But I am a believer in the fact that we can improve our health without supplements. Like I take supplements myself, but I do think it's possible if we were to live a more biologically appropriate lifestyle that we could improve our health without buying any products. One last thing for you. If people wanted to find you, learn more about you, how can they find you?
Yeah, so I have a therapy practice. I'm based out of St. Louis, Missouri, and my practice website is alternativetherapystl.com. And that's the place to go if you're curious about my work with clients. I see therapy clients. I also do some spiritual counseling. I do functional nutrition and some coaching work. So, if you want my clinical work as a therapist, you'd have to live in Missouri or Illinois. But if you're interested in more of like the nutrition and the coaching and the spiritual counseling, I could do that with you no matter in the world where you are. And then I have another site called holisticandfunctionalpsychology.com. I know that's kind of long, but that is my hub for training practitioners, therapists, and other wellness professionals. So I'm getting into leading retreats. I'm leading a retreat for therapists and wellness professionals in Costa Rica in February 2026. So you can find details about that on there. You can also find the holistic wellness questionnaire that I was talking about earlier. It's free for professionals to take. So if that's something that you want to take to assess your own wellness and you're a practitioner, you could take it there. And then if you want, you can upgrade and pay for a license to use it and also training to use that. And then I'm also putting together continuing education courses and stuff like that on there. And if you are a client or just a person, you're not a professional and you're interested in that holistic wellness questionnaire, you can go to my therapy site and you can find it on there and you can take the brief version for free. And you can pay to upgrade to get advanced insights and reflection and things like that.
Very helpful. Thank you so much. It sounds like we kind of do some similar things. So like I'm licensed in Utah and Idaho as a therapist, but then I will see people across state lines if it's more nutrition focused.
Yeah.
And so we do some similar things there. Thanks so much for joining me. It was fun.
Thank you, Cody.
Hey, thank you so much for listening through to the end of the episode. I was looking at my analytics and I'm noticing that some people are dropping off halfway through the episodes, which is actually why I started having shorter episodes. But I get it. Life is busy. We're distracted. It is what it is. I might just start offering some perks for the people who listen to the entire episode, and here's one of them. So Emma is actually offering a coupon code to my listeners. This is particularly for therapists, or probably any practitioner will do if you're interested in attending her retreat in Costa Rica. This retreat, once again, is in February in Costa Rica. It honestly sounds like an amazing experience. But if you are interested in this, go to holisticandfunctionalpsychology.com/retreat and use the coupon code REALFOOD, REALFOOD, for $100 off the retreat deposit. I'm going to put this in the show notes as well. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review. That really helps me out. And also subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. Real Food Mental Health is for informational and entertainment purposes only. I do not necessarily agree with all of the views shared by guests. The information presented on this podcast is not intended to replace any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. While I am a healthcare provider, I am not your provider. Always seek the advice of an appropriate healthcare practitioner with any personal questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this podcast. Reliance on information provided by this podcast is at your own risk.